Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. Today's podcast objective is to understand what exactly is software product development. Today we are joined by Raghuram Sripada. He works at Salesforce and he has a lot of experience in this space. Welcome, Mr. Raghuram, to the podcast. I am delighted to have you here today.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sahil. I'm excited to be part of this.
All right. So now, talking about yourself, can you tell me about your current role at Salesforce and what exactly do you do there? Like, what does a typical day look like?
Yeah, so I work with this most happening SaaS company. SaaS means software as a service. This is one space of cloud where we provide software to our customers in a subscription model. And then when we sell these products to our customers, someone needs to go and implement them, customize them. So that is where our partners come in. So I work with our partners to ensure that they have the right tools, the latest and greatest knowledge, so that they succeed with these implementations and ensure that these implementations succeed. So I work with almost all the large implementation partners in the world. So they cater to customers all over the globe, starting from the US to Europe to everywhere in Asia Pacific.
That sounds very interesting working with partners at the top of their fields as well. Now, can you know about your academic history, about how your academic journey has helped you to come where you are so far?
Very interesting. This is one question I'm really excited about answering. So I started my career when I was in my teens. So at that time, I didn't have a university degree. So I just completed my diploma in electronics and communications engineering. So I started as a customer engineer, mostly working on the computer hardware. So helping implement or installations and then setting up the systems and then installing software on that and then supporting that. And that's how I started. But when I was doing that, most of this work was on site. So the customers had these installations. So I used to spend time at the customer location. Also used to get a lot of time. So I used to write some code at that time. So I started learning C programming. So I developed interest in that. So that's when I realized that that is what I really wanted to do. But there was a challenge. So those days, uh, the companies were not allowing you to write code for the customers unless you had a 16-year degree. So that's where I started looking for opportunities to improve my academic qualifications. I was working for this company called ORG Systems. So it was founded by Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. So it was full of BITS years. A lot of graduates from BITS Pilani used to work there. So some of my seniors suggested that I pursue what was known as a collaboration course. So it's part of the distance learning program. So they asked me to do that. That is where things have changed. So I enrolled for my bachelor's with BITS Pilani. I started acquiring the academic part of it. The interesting part there is that BITS Pilani provides these assignments. So the assignments, the ones that were assigned to me, they were very close to what I was already doing. So I started getting my job had changed. I started developing code. When I was to give an example, when I was working on C programming on Unix systems, my assignment had something related to say process management on operating systems. It is exactly what I was doing at work, and then it is also aligned with what I was studying at that time. That really helped me. I was learning the concepts, and then I was already developing the same or similar software, and I was able to relate what I was learning to what I was doing. That was a major advantage that I got from this collaborative course, learning while working.
That sounds very interesting, especially a collaborative program with BITS Pilani. There's so many kids out there today who fail to make it into the college itself, and here you are with the collaborative program with them. That sounds very, very interesting to I think me and I think the audience who is going to listen to this later on. Now, moving on, I have noticed that you have played various roles in your 30-year career. Could you elaborate on the roles you have played and the different kind of roles you have played that too?
Yeah. So as I already mentioned, I started as a customer engineer. And then from there, I moved into what was known as system administrator and then database administrator for some time. And then I started developing code. I started getting some opportunities to develop small pieces of code for areas very close to what I was already doing. I got my electronics diploma. And then the initial code I wrote was for real devices. So this is for communications, the serial communications to make two computers communicate using what was known as an RS-232 standard. It was the one of the initial way of communicating. So I was writing that. Later, I got more and more complex development opportunities, more and more complex applications. So I worked for what were known as turnkey solutions companies, where they supplied hardware, operating system, as well as the software that the end customer required. So I spent there for some time, and then I got opportunities to work with some startups. So where I worked, and then I totally shifted into product development. So I got an opportunity to work in the Silicon Valley. That changed my perspective, and then I completely switched to just product development. I work for startups, so various startups for telco. This is on the switches side, and also on the business side. They have these products called BSS and OSS systems. This is a very telecom specific applications. I work there, so it was completely product development. So that's where I started playing various roles. One of them was tech lead, where leading a group of software engineers developing software. And then I became an architect, so architecting complex software. And again, applying everything I had learned till then. And I delivered products from scratch to the production. So that is taking to the customer. Then I also had to play the role of uh, sales engineer. Sales engineer is the one who goes and demonstrates the value of the product, demonstrates the product, and then convinces the end customer. So I played that role. And then I moved into larger companies where I played the role of an engineering manager. Then it got bigger, a senior engineering manager with managers reporting to me. Then I developed interest in product management. So I switched again to product management role. I was a product manager for 6 7 years. Then after that, I switched my role once again to the partner facing role. That is my current role. I have been playing this for the past 6 7 years, where I work closely with partners, where help partners implement the same products that we develop.
All right, since considering the fact that you have played various roles over such an illustrious career, I have another question for you, right? So now, over the last 30 years, the technology landscape has changed massively, right? Since the time you started in this industry and to what it is today. How exactly did you adapt to this change?
Very interesting question. I really like this question. So when I started my career, I was mostly doing C program. So I really liked it. Even now, I like the language. It's like it's close to my mother tongue. So I had to learn the new techniques within the language itself. Initially, I was writing for the devices, what was known as this category of software is called device drivers, and then writing communication software, etc. And then later, I had to write applications. Uh, which are used by end customers, right, or end users. So that is user centric. Then I also had to develop what are known as middleware products. So as I switched from one product to another product, as we progressed, the languages I had to learn also had changed. So I started with a programming language called C. From there, I had to learn C++ because that became a very popular language. Later came a language called Java, which is now very popular. I had to learn Java. So the interesting part with this journey is that so when you do C, you learn certain ways of developing the code. Then when you switch to C++, so you had to implement a new set of techniques. So for example, object-oriented programming, which C++ was really designed for. You need to apply a new ways of developing software. And then it also has certain interesting aspects that, for example, there is this concept called memory management. You allocate memory and then you free up the memory once you are done. Then later when Java came in, I had to again learn new techniques. But whenever I had to learn new techniques, I also had to unlearn certain aspects of the previous technology. And then after Java, I had to learn again. Fortunately, I didn't have to change much after Java. I did Java for almost a decade. So using Java for product development. Then, but a lot of new frameworks came in. So frameworks are the software some other developers develop, which you use as part of your development. They create what are known as libraries. These are reusable artifacts. You use them. So I had to learn those as well, and I had to learn the newer way of communicating between computers. For example, socket programming. I started with the hardware-centric RS-232 based communications. Later, I had to do socket programming on TCP/IP. And then later, I had to change to middleware. So again, the interesting part here is that I had to continuously learn. I had to unlearn as well. So this industry requires you to continuously learn the new languages, new techniques, new algorithms, right? And then there may be completely new technologies that may come in, disrupting the previous era of technologies or the previous technologies. So you'll have to continuously learn. This industry really demands that.
That sounds very wonderful, and I think learning itself is an enriching process. It's a really good process to learn, especially you have to learn something and unlearn the same thing in order to progress to the next subset of what's happening. Right now, another question to you, it's very similar to the question I asked you right now. So the IT industry is it's very new in India, right? So even like someone like you who has 3 decades of experience in India, it is still not there at the moment, right? So, and in this industry in India is very export oriented, right? So, what changes have you seen in this industry? Like, what changes have you seen in India as well in relation to this industry?
Yeah. So there is this uh, misconception that IT industry is new. It's not really new because when I started, by the time I started, there were already several Indian companies. So, for example, look at ORG Systems where I worked, and then HCL, Wipro, and then Tata's, and there were many companies. We also went through some changes. So the IT industry was there, but during 77, uh, the government took some decision and then asked some of the MNCs to leave the country. So some of the international players left. And then after 90s, when the economy opened up, so the larger players started coming back in. But during that period, the Indian companies started growing. So it was there. But we had some restrictions, the international restrictions about export control of, say, more powerful computers to India. Because of that, it didn't really grow as fast, right? Everything grew locally. Now, when I started, it was already established, but not at this scale. So when the economy opened up and then the globalization started kicking in, so there were more opportunities to export software to the other countries. That really changed the way the industry started operating. So then the new generation companies came in, where we started providing services. These are known as services companies, where there are customers in maybe US or Europe. So where they want to get certain functionality developed for their businesses, and then certain software to be developed. So they wanted cheaper alternatives for the development. First of all, the development cost is there. That is one aspect. But there is also another aspect. So as the IT industry grew worldwide, so there was a scarcity of talent in various markets. So India, we are very passionate about education. and we are very passionate about engineering education, STEM degrees. So we have a lot of STEM graduates, and then they started seeing value in acquiring these IT skills. So we became sort of a natural destination for these jobs. So the services companies they started, so they started taking the work and then started developing these custom applications and also various services. It's not just the software development; they also provide a lot of services. For example, managing these servers or taking care of, say, maintaining maintenance of the software. It's called there's a set of services called AMS, so application management services. It requires changing the application logic continuously or managing that or helping the users. Support services. There are people in the US using the software, but they need some support at those services. So it gradually expanded. So services companies they started growing. And later, based on the talent pool here, some of the product companies started coming to India. They started setting up what are known as offshore development centers, or they have different names: offshore development centers, offshore delivery centers, or India R&D centers. So these are part of the larger product development organizations, but they started setting up in predominantly Bangalore, and then later they expanded into in Pune, Hyderabad, and other places. Right? So that's where I started seeing this growth, especially around 97, 98. So I started seeing the boom. So again, out of 30 years, I really worked outside only for 2 years. Most of the time, I worked in India. I went through this entire.
So you mentioned service companies and product companies. Can you tell the difference between both these companies? Like, what exactly is the core difference between a service company and a product company?
Okay, so service companies they provide various kinds of services. So some of them are known as IT-enabled services, like for example, call centers, running it for someone else. Right? And then when it comes to software, the services companies develop software for someone else. They are providing the development services. Right? And they typically develop, for example, certain features. Or they may even be just supplying manpower. They don't even decide what to develop. Right? Even that is one of the services. So it is called manpower augmentation. And then some of the services companies they took the functionality, the responsibility to develop the functionality, or to the responsibility to develop a custom application for a customer's use case, and then provide. Then some of the services companies also provide the development services to product companies. Now let me talk about the product companies. The product companies develop products which are used by more than one customer. So the major difference between the custom applications in the product development is the custom application is for a specific customer or maybe a set of customers, very limited, very very specific about the requirements of that set of customers or a specific customer. So it is sort of bespoke development, like the way we go to the tailor, get a suit stitched, right? It is only for us. That is a very custom application development. Whereas when it comes to product development, I would like to compare it with maybe the t-shirts that you buy, right? So they design a t-shirt and they make hundreds of copies of that t-shirt. So that is similar to product development. So product development is a software developed to cater to multiple customers, and it is sold, the same software is sold to multiple customers. That is a slightly different model because it requires understanding, say, the requirements that apply to multiple customers and then making it in such a way that it can be used by more than one customer. That is real difference between the services and the product.
Well, I think that will help clear out a lot of questions which the audience might have. Now, you had talked about your varied roles in product development, right? So, what exactly is product development, right? What is this field like? Can you give some insights into it?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, product is creating a piece of software which is used by many customers. And so, this requires understanding the customer's requirement. So, even before that, understanding the market. So, look at, for example, telecom, right? So, telecom, there are many telecom providers, so all over the world. So everyone may have some common requirements. For example, how do you cater to your customers? If customers have, for example, need to call the telco for some support, right? So they need some software. Let us call it a call center software. Right? So this is a common requirement for all the telcos. Or if you go further, call center as a general use case is a requirement for almost any business which deals with customers. And everyone needs that. So identifying such markets, such use cases, we call them use cases, the requirements. Right? Understanding that and then understanding the details of that is one part. And then this is what the product managers do. They try to understand what is the market and what are the use cases, what are the requirements, and then they convert that into what is known as the requirements documents, right? So then that is then fed into the rest of the product development cycle. So the rest of the cycle is really converting these requirements or the use cases into the software. It has a lot of process. So there are design cycles that go in. First of all, looking at we call them user stories. The product manager writes user stories. And then the product manager also decides if there are, say, so 100 requirements, so when to release which requirement or when to take it to the market. Again, a lot goes into that. So what should be the first feature or first set of features to be taken to the market? And what should be the minimum product? So that is minimum viable product, that's what we call. So once that is identified, expanding on that, converting that into design and converting that into the actual code. And then once you write the code, so when we write the code, there may be bugs, right? You need to test that. That is where quality comes in. So as I said, there is product management, there are developers, and then there is quality. That is where testing and all comes in. And then finally, you need to release it to the market. That is where there are the process called release management, and then finally taking it to the product. That's where the product marketing comes in. Once the product is taken to the market, you need to sell that. To sell that, there are sales teams. So it may be either the company which is selling or it may be the partners who may be selling. So you need to train the sales teams. Okay, and then you also, once you sell that, customers may start implementing these products, start adopting the product. During the adoption, you may have to train the customers or you may have to train the partners who are implementing the product. And then you also will have to train the partners who are implementing the products. So there are so many aspects within the product companies. One is starting from the requirements all the way till building the software. And then after building the software, taking to the market and then implementing that.
So you did mention a lot of aspects in this field, right? So what are the career prospects like in this field for the next 20 years, next 30 years? Should someone get into this field right now or should they wait?
Yeah, so let me talk about India perspective, then we can expand. So when I started my career 30 years ago, there were not many international product companies. No, MNCs were not there, right? Because of the restrictions we had. So we are not globalized, and then we had mostly the homegrown product companies, so which are mostly focusing on the point solutions and then hardware and developing some operating systems. So that's what they were doing. But later, when the MNCs came in, they started setting up huge R&D centers here. Okay. So again, I would say that after Silicon Valley, most of the MNCs they have the largest R&D centers in India. When I say R&D centers, they're developing products in India. So you name a large brand, so large software company, software MNC. So they have large R&D centers in India. So now you talked about prospects, right? I saw huge growth during my career itself. So especially after 99. So you might not be aware that there was an era called dot-com era.
Yes, I'm aware of it.
Right. So during dot-com era, so it grew very fast and then there was a lot of demand for talent. So a lot of companies they started setting up their India delivery centers, India development centers. That's how the culture of product development, it suddenly boomed in India. And so people started getting into that. And then after that, the large companies, they started seeing value. And then, in fact, to be fair, some of the large companies, they saw the value much earlier, especially on the hardware side, because India had a strong hardware pool. They started doing that. And then they started setting up. Now, after that, we started seeing more and more expand. Right? So today, India is sort of an inseparable part of any global product MNC's product development organization, and it's only growing. And India is the fastest growing offshore or global delivery center or global R&D center for any product companies. So if you look at the campus recruitments, so when I was in engineering, I used to recruit from campuses also, right? So these product companies, they go to campuses. So they are the first to be there in the campuses, whether it's IITs or the top colleges like BITS and all, right? So they fight for talent. So there is so much demand.
Yeah.
Okay, now it expanded to initially they used to go to only the top colleges. Now there is so much demand that now they are going to many government colleges and even tier two colleges. The reason I'm giving you this example is that that is the kind of demand we are seeing. Now, when we talk about the product development, again, it's not just about coding. There are various roles. So you can become a product manager, or you can get into development. And then there are also a lot of sort of ancillary jobs that are there. For example, documenting the products, developing, say, user guides, or developing even the training content. A lot of that happens here. So there are jobs for almost every graduate. For of course, for STEM graduates, there are more jobs because, and also that is one area where rest of the world is not creating enough number of STEM graduates. So because of that, we have more prospects here, and every MNC realizes that India creates a lot of STEM graduates, a lot of engineers. So they come here for this talent. So there are strong prospects. So whether you are from a STEM background or with a non-STEM background, if you have strong, say, communication skills, you have roles there. And if you are from, say, marketing kind of background, you have roles there. So product companies are creating a lot of jobs. Now, specific to product development, if you are very good at your technical skills, especially in development from computer science or acquired computer or programming skills or any allied skills, you have an opportunity there.
So you talked about like you had an opportunity if you were good at programming, right? So now many kids out there today do love to code, but they don't want to put the amount of time it takes into coding, right? So for them, just to understand how exactly is coding important to product development and how much time should they even focus on coding? And before you even answer that question, there's another question I have for you, which is how can someone sit down for 4 to 5 hours and continuously code, right? There are many students out there who have that attention span issue, especially with the internet now coming into play with in so many of our in our daily life. So can you please give an can you please help on that?
Yeah, let me answer it the other way.
All
Right,
right.
so I'll change the order. It's your first question. Right, so it is about the importance of coding. Right? Don't look at it as coding. Right? So what is really coding? What are you really doing with a program? You are solving a problem in a specific way, in an organized way, a logical way. So this is one skill, in my opinion, everyone should acquire. So we are seeing those efforts in India these days from the government also. Otherwise, if you look at the US government, right? So they started almost a decade ago the effort to increase the computer science at school level itself. And then there were a lot of tools that were developed to introduce coding to the students at an early age. So one of them is Scratch, for example, a tool using which kids can start learning programming. And then there is also this initiative called code.org, where anyone can go and then they gamified it and then do it well. The reason they are doing it or they are investing in that is this is a very important skill. So even if you don't end up as a programmer, you are at least acquiring the skill to solve problems in an organized manner, in a specific manner. In a you divide the larger problem into the smaller chunks and then start solving it, or you find the repeatability of one particular problem, or you may see the areas to optimize. So this is something that we use in our real life also. For example, doing things in parallel, right? Or starting something, let that continue, and then take up another task, and then go back to that task and continue, right? This is parallelizing, right? So these are all techniques. That is what the programming really teaches you. That is one part. Now, programming skills are important, or coding skills are important increasingly in almost every field. There is no field that the software doesn't touch, the technology doesn't touch. You talk about any field, there is software that is touching. Right? That's why it is very important, irrespective of which field you are getting into, having some coding knowledge. And then a lot of work we do. Let us look at Excel. Right? In Excel, you write and then you write formulas, and then you also in some cases you may be writing more complex scripts. Right? This is all coding, and these are the skills that you are acquiring. If you have skills, coding skills, you can automate a lot of things which otherwise you do manually. So if you're working on say Excel, a lot of tasks can be automated, right? So for that, these skills will be useful. And if you are very good at that, there is an amazing career for you, because the coding skills are in demand, because more and more industries, more and more businesses are automating. That is another area I would like to stress. So the world had changed, and so every company is trying to automate most of the processes. When I say processes, these are all the tasks that they perform as to deliver, say, an end product to their customers or to serve their customers. There are a lot of business processes that happen internally. So, for example, when you order something on Amazon, and so what are you doing? You're going there and then selecting something, and then you're submitting. So basically, you're checking out and you're paying, and after that, there's a lot that is happening. Some communication needs to go to some seller, the actual seller. That is what we call fulfilling. And so someone will have to then finally ship it. So that means they'll have to communicate to the shipping company to come and pick it, right? And then they'll have to take care of putting the address right, and then finally they need to route it so that it reaches you. Everything earlier people used to do manually, right? And it is automated in such a way that after you order, sometimes you are getting your product in 12 hours. There's a lot of automation is done behind the scenes. Every business is trying to go towards that automation, and also there are new exciting areas that is to serve you proactively. So that is where the new innovations and advances like AI come into the play. For example, you bought something on Amazon, and next time when you go, it is also recommending, right? Or where you bought something and it is also recommending a related product that you may find useful. So this a lot goes into that. This is all automated. Right? It's not humans which are doing that. So looking at that, every business is asking, why can't my business process be as smart, as automated? Even the smaller businesses, the what we call the small and medium enterprises, even they are looking at automating so that they improve their productivity, they improve their efficiency, they also improve the way they are serving their customers. That is what where we call the customer experience. Then also, let us look at you. You are a customer, right? So you have this new expectation that when you open your say e-commerce site, you go to Amazon and then you select something, you're expecting that to be delivered within X number of hours, right? And then you received it and you are unable to configure it the way you want. What are you expecting? You want some resolution immediately, right? And you would like to quickly chat with the customer service from then and there. And then, if possible, have a video call and do a screen share and then show to that customer executive. And so these are the demands from the customers also. The new age customers are asking for the new experiences, right? That requires a lot of automation. So the world has changed. There's a lot of requirement to automate. This is what we call digital transformation. So digital transformation is creating a lot of jobs for technology, especially for software development. That is where your coding skills again help you. Right? It is very important. If you have coding skills, you are guaranteed a job. That's what I can say now.
Okay, that's a very interesting take that having coding skills will enable you to definitely have a job. Now, you had mentioned that you had worked at various startups, right? So now, how exactly was the experience at working at a startup? I know it's very different from working at a corporate, but a startup also has its own vibe, I would say, right? How was that like?
Yeah, so startup has certainly has its glamour because yeah, there is sort of an aura around startups, and then they get a lot of press because most of the startups are usually trying to disrupt something. Right? So that is most of the cases. So, but one advantage for if you're starting your career, right? So one advantage you will have with startups. In before I even go there, right? So there is some difference between startups and these large companies. Large companies, they're more organized, okay, and to organize that, they need to put in place a lot of teams, okay, with that. So there is a structure. The organizations become very big. There are going to be a lot of protocols, lot of communication channels, and you may call that bureaucracy. Okay, and then before you take a decision, so a lot of checks and balances would be there, and a lot of eyes would be there on that. Then finally, before you deliver that, it takes time. But again, they do that to ensure that they don't do any mistakes because there's so many stakeholders involved, and in many cases they're also responsible or answerable to their shareholders. Many of these large companies are also publicly traded. When it comes to the startups, they have one advantage. So they're really small, they are nimble. At the same time, they also face challenges of resources. The large companies have a lot of resources, but these companies will have to really innovate. They really have to deliver with limited resources. And that is my experience. When I worked with the startups, I had to play multiple roles simultaneously. I was setting up the network in the office because we were very few people, and each of us was we took different responsibility. And I set up my servers, I set up my operating systems, then networking, and then I set up the databases, and then I started setting up the users. It's called provisioning. Now in the large companies, so there is a team for provisioning. Right? In startup, so you do everything, right? And then I, after setting up everything, I also became a developer, and then later an architect, right? And then when you are going to the customers, the same people who are developing the product, they also wear the hat of a solution engineer or a sales engineer. You go and sell the value to your customers. So you get all these opportunities in a startup, but at the same time, they work with limited resources. They try to optimize the resources that they are deploying. They try to get maximum out of every person that is deployed or every resource that is deployed. You have a chance of learning many things in a startup. In a large company, you do a specific role. You play a specific role because these are all roles, what we call matrix. So matrix organizations. So you have you fit into a specific department with a specific role with a job description defined. And if you need to get anything to do, there is someone else, right? So you need to go there and you work with them. So that's where you. It also provides a lot of advantages. You are focusing on only one area, and then you're also developing the awareness about the organizations, large organizations, because every startup at some point will have to grow big and they'll also become large organizations. So you acquire those skills of working with different kinds of people, and then working with different functions. You'll also have the advantage of a company with much more resources. Right? So that is the major difference between the startups and the large companies.
Okay, I think that definitely will clear up a lot for a lot of people out there. Now, you talked about growing big, right? Now, growing big for anybody means to build a big network for themselves, right? So, how important is networking in today's world, and how does it add to your professional life?
Very good question. Very good question. So, networking is very, very important. For your professional growth, for sure. Uh, look at our social life. What do we do when we need some help? Say within our housing society, you need something, right? So to be done. What do? You call the person that you know the most, right, within your community. So the same thing applies in professional life also. So I'll give maybe examples from multiple aspects. For example, I wanted to change my role, right? So then to change my role, okay, I played my developer role enough, but I want to play, say, the role of an architect. Right? I have seen complex use cases. I solve those problems. When I want to do that, so I will reach out to maybe people I know in other departments if I am in a large company, or people I know in other organizations. So then they know me. So if they know me, they have the confidence in what I can do, they may refer. And then there is another aspect. You need to continuously learn. This learning, it requires, say, collaborating with others. So sometimes the people that you collaborate maybe outside your organizations. That's where we have these meetups and all, right? So I keep on attending meetups where you meet the like-minded people with what we call special interest groups, right? So you may be interested in, say, iOS development. There are iOS development developer meetups that happen in Bangalore. You may be attending, or you may be interested in, say, Salesforce, say, Lightning development. There are groups, special interest groups focusing on that, or you're interested in, say, containers or container technology. You can go and join. There, you acquire new knowledge about new technologies, and also you are making friends there. And then they may be opening more opportunities for you. So networking helps you again in your reach, and also acquiring knowledge. And a lot of times, uh, I reached out to my network for technical help. So within the organization, sometimes outside the organization. And I should also tell that my current job I landed because of my network. Okay. So, and then on LinkedIn, whenever you see a job posting, what do you do? So the first thing you do is to check who is working with that company. So do I know anyone in that company? Can I reach to that person? Now, this is where it becomes interesting. Networking is not just having a connect, and you need to nurture that. So how do you nurture? That requires an effort, right? You need to be in touch with them. You need to meet them. You need to greet them when required. Okay, you maintain the contact, and then there is a lot of give and take that happens. So you need to give stuff that someone else needs, and then you will be free, or uh, you won't hesitate. Then when you give something, then you will be in a position to ask for help without any hesitancy. So again, they're a very powerful tool. If you ask me, networking is the most powerful tool to grow in your career, and also it opens a lot of doors for you.
So I think to summarize what you just said, I think that networking definitely is a powerful tool, but in order to grow, you need to nurture the relationships you make with a lot of people, right?
Yep.
So with that, I would like to conclude the podcast. We had a lot of key takeaways from this. We learned what exactly is product development. We learned about the life of what a product developer looks like, and we also learned how important is coding and networking with respect to this profession.
Yeah. So before we conclude, one suggestion to everyone attending this. So acquire technical skills, right? You build networks, that is very powerful, very important, but acquire technical skills. Coding, in my opinion, is an essential skill. It is very, very important. It helps you. So if you're very good at that, You may land very good jobs in the software companies. So otherwise also the skill that you acquire, it changes the way you solve problems in your daily life. Then if you really acquire good coding skills, it will also help you automate a lot of stuff that you will be doing in a day-to-day office life. So please acquire coding skills, and also encourage everyone in your circle to acquire coding skills. There's so many tools available. So code.org is there if you are kids. So if you want to earn say advanced skills, there's so many MOOCs available. So please use them and acquire skills. With that, all the best, and thank you very much, Sahil, for giving this opportunity.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you here with us today. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in.
Sure. Thank you.